in my chair, Kyle. And then also a special thanks to Jason Lasser. I've been doing an independent study with a web designer, so he's been helping me with a lot of back-end coding about servers. So I'm going to start kind of with this image in the top left. This is actually an MEP model for a building. So behind all the fancy surfaces, the concrete, the floor, the ceilings, this is what's underneath. So it's really a jumble of a mess. So I think architecture, if you're putting a state design of the environmental engagement system and use the building itself, this means to mediate thermal comfort control. So we are intentionally designing buildings that require complex, complicated mechanical systems to counteract not only the exterior environment, but the inhabitable spaces. So can we use these environmental engagement strategies to find or to improve a building's performance capabilities and qualities, and then also help inform alternate ordering systems within that? So typically within a building, you have a program, you design a building around it, and then it gets handed off to an HVAC engineer. That's where the thermal design gets in place. So I'm proposing that a new method should be put in place where the what I'm calling these environmental engagement strategies should inform and kind of be an integral process to how you develop the design of the building, and it should really speak to the program and the building form. So there are two kind of pieces through the project that I'm going to walk you through today. We're going to identify and kind of help understand some of the techniques and strategies that can contribute to thermal comfort control, and then look to see how we can assemble and aggregate these strategies to create a building on a given site and a given program. So before we kind of get into this giant adventure that we're about to embark on, we kind of need to understand what thermal comfort is and what, there's a lot of factors that play into this, both personal and environmental. Personal being that your activity level, are you sitting down, are you laying down, are you doing physical labor, the amount of clothing that you have, is it insulated, is it allowed to breathe? All of these kind of personal factors will kind of contribute to your personal comfort within a space. Looking a little bit more at the externalities of some of these factors, the number of people within a space. So the amount of people that are in this room are creating a lot more heat than what you'd have in a small office or a cubicle. So, and then also there are externalities within the interior environment of spaces. So lights creating heat, people creating heat, there's equipment creating heat, the laptops, your computers, all contribute to these internal gains that all affect the thermal comfort of a space. So, then beyond looking at these kind of interior and exterior factors that contribute to thermal comfort, there are also the larger scale of the environment, the climate, the weather. So we can look at kind of an extreme case here in Milwaukee where we have very hot and then very cold winters. So it'd be extreme and then like a large gap in between those range of temperatures. So when we start plotting some of the dry bulb temperature, the temperature outside and the humidity level in a certain season, we can start to plot these on a psychrometric chart and kind of identify certain strategies that we can design towards, at least some basic concepts that we can start to apply strategies to. So in the spring, there's a whole range of, each of these black dots represents a day and its temperature and humidity. So each of these kind of sections outline kind of a general concept of a strategy to kind of design towards thermally. And then all of these kind of points change seasonally. All these points kind of get hotter, more humidity in the summer. So we have to have different strategies for dealing with different kind of thermal conditions that are happening in the environment. In the summer, we're going to be cooling more. We need to introduce natural ventilation. And then as we go on to the fall and winter months, things become cooler. So we need to kind of, can we rely on the internal gains of the building to heat it? If that's not enough, can we use other heating methods to kind of control the heat in that space? So these kind of seasonal conditions set up these design strategies that we start to begin to maybe think of strategies to kind of counteract or maybe engage the environment in a way that's not, I guess, counteracting what's going on, but to kind of uphold and utilize some of those environmental factors. So I've kind of created this, what we've been kind of talking about is a lexicon, or this is the kind of language of all some of the strategies that you can use to kind of mediate thermal comfort control within spaces. So there are theories behind it. Typically, in a mechanical-driven building design where you want large floor plates, you get less daylighting, less core ventilation. They're all centered around the mechanical core for distribute or optimized distribution of mechanical systems. You want to minimize the exterior surface area, control the environment inside, and kind of exclude the environment. So the kind of new way of, or I guess not new, but an alternate way of thinking about how we can design the enclosure systems or buildings around this, we look at enclosure-dominated designs. So that's thinner floor plates that allow for better daylighting, natural ventilation, maximize the exterior surface area so you can apply surfaces that allow these environmental factors to take place in the cooling and heating of the building. And then also maximize solar orientation and the use of a radiant floor system. So then we kind of move on and we can look to see how programs impact, how we can look at these design buildings. So can program change within a building and how it moves? So can it contract or expand during different seasons or different parts of the day? Are there pieces of the program that demand different parts of conditioning? So if some spaces have no conditioning, no mechanical, would be entirely naturally ventilated. Or are there pieces like lab spaces or auditoriums that need to be a little bit more artificially conditioned to kind of control their environments? And then, this is kind of going on again, but how you can move through the building, right? Or how people can react to what's happening in its external environment. And we kind of look to see how form and surface can kind of take a place in developing these strategies. So, we want to maximize the external surface area so we can allow natural daylighting and now natural ventilation. So we need to be able to kind of allow these surfaces to be applied to them. So can we think of these surfaces being a little bit more temporal? Can they change over a series of seasonal changes? Can we look at mass and how light systems are? And all of these play into effect of like what orientation it's in. Just by looking at a material's orientation plays into account of how it can perform. So can it heat a space? Can it absorb heat? Can it block heat? Can it block wind? All of these kind of add to how we can utilize some of these strategies. So this kind of matrix is here to set up at least the language in which we can start to apply to a building strategy. So looking a little bit at the specific site and program, this site is in the Reed Street Yards, which is a water technology development. So there will be lab space, office space, and room for auditorium. this is the site you see right down here. It's on the northeast corner of the Reed Street Yards, kind of just east of the Harley-Davidson Center, and right on the Menominee River. So, I kind of looked at if you were to take one of these typically mechanical-driven designs and kind of lay that out on the site. So you have 100,000 square feet of office space in the orange, 30,000 square feet of lab space and auditoria and atrium functions. And then we can kind of apply this enclosure-dominated design method to kind of redistribute this program into a more active building form. So using varied heights, wrapping around for solar orientation, maximize that southern light, creating microclimates, utilizing the Menominee River for bringing in water that can add to cooling systems. And then enclosure systems that we can start to apply some of these surfaces to. This is the building as it is, with all its applied surfaces, formal arrangement. So this is the office block. Kind of going to go through and identify some of these strategies and techniques that have been applied to this building to show how kind of activating with the environment. So in the black are these massive kind of concrete walls that can absorb heat during the day, cool off at night, stay cool during the day. These are what we've been referring to as the vertical lungs on the office. So these vertical lungs are kind of these tempering chambers that a lot of things happen in. They can be seasonal product, or they can be utilized space in nicer seasons, so they can be ventilated. Program can expand into them. Then in winter, when the season is cooler, people can come back into the building and they can be used as kind of a thermal tempering spaces where it's not a completely exterior space, but kind of an indoor-outdoor space where you can kind of control or temper the air within there, so you can still kind of use the natural ventilation within that space. And then moving on to the atrium and lab space. The atrium space would probably be have the highest kind of mechanical load in a typical building because it has the most concentrated amount of people or occupants. So it generates the most a need for kind of to be naturally ventilated. So you have this kind of building scale chimney that catches the ventilation coming over the building to the east. You can kind of catch lake breezes and solar breezes, and then use that to naturally ventilate the spaces within that auditorium. And then an insulative surrounding paneling. We also kind of looked at how the surface can kind of deform or inflate to create thermodynamic effects. So there are these ETFE, ethylene, tetrafluoroethylene, facades, and skid. So a little bit more about this ETFE. There are these plastic foils that when you inflate them, they become more insulative cushions that can kind of hold back the internal gains within the spaces. And then you can also inflate different foils within these cushions that have printed patterns on them, so when you inflate them, they cross over and block out the solar radiation into the space. And then kind of more site-wide, biofiltration system that collects all of the storm water from all the surrounding sites and then just runs them through the biofiltration pools within the building. It can also act as dehumidification. So then, look, when we have this building form with all these surfaces, we can start to analyze it by running it through. I've been using a program called Diva. You can analyze the amount of solar radiation a surface can get annually, or during a month, or during a certain day. And you can start to kind of choose or find out what would be an optimal surface to place a little bit more performative surfaces like photovoltaic panels. So I guess if you were looking, if you were trying to identify a place where you're going to put PV panels on the building, and this would be the optimal place because of the amount of sunlight or solar radiation that surface gets. So then, I'm going to kind of go through a sequence of how this building kind of reacts seasonally, and how we can start to use some of these strategies and techniques that are kind of outlined in the video. So in the summer months, it gets warmer, so we need to worry about the building overheating. These massive concrete surfaces, all these interior spaces, all this glass, they're all going to overheat. So how do we mediate those thermal gains? So within this, our ETFE coils can expand, have building scale kind of shading devices that can be temporal. They can go up in the summer and be taken down in the winter. This is kind of the shading system. And then the facade reacting to the amount of solar radiation or the summer. So looking a little bit more of the office block, we can look at how solar radiation is impacting some of those surfaces. So this is what would be typically happening during the summer, and we can use and we kind of look in these spaces where are the spaces being shaded, where are the spaces that are being overheated, and what happens when you deploy a shading system. So those shading systems can absorb that heat, sunlight, direct solar radiation, and actually the blue being less solar radiation block a lot of that, kind of cool these massive surfaces that are being used to kind of temper and regulate the office. So these, I want to say one last thing about these kind of vertical lungs. So if you're not familiar with a double skin facade, it's a double layered system, and we all kind of understand that there's a cushion of air in between, and when it heats up, that air is allowed to be vented out the top. But these vertical lungs have been kind of designed in a way that to kind of express that a little bit more. So the facets on the vertical lungs have been oriented in a way that it can capture the majority with the optimal point at which solar radiation is hitting. So where it's yellow on here, it's getting the most amount of solar radiation. And then at the bottom, it's a little bit more blue, so it's a cooler area. So maybe a little thermodynamics real quick. So in thermodynamics, energy moves from a higher energy to a low body energy. When molecules heat up, they start to move faster. And when they cool down, they move slower. When these molecules heat up, they become more buoyant, and that's why warm air rises, not heat rises. And when they cool, they become more dense, and therefore gravity pushes them down. So when we start to look at some of these kind of surfaces on these vertical lungs, we can kind of tune where we would want to have the kind of optimal amount of solar radiation hitting some points and not somewhere else. So we can kind of cultivate a system that's heating up an air and releasing at the top and sucking in cool air through the bottom. we've got two. So we can kind of cut and make cross sections through this building and look at how more of these individual strategies are happening according to what's happening in the lab or office spaces. So within the lab space, it's kind of thermally layered with this kind of flexible atrium space on the outside, and then kind of layered by a mechanical ventilation shaft area, and then the actual lab zone. In the summer, we get more heat, solar radiation, these oils can expand. We can use kind of the storm water that is being collected from the surrounding site to use in these biofiltration systems or pools to add to the dehumidification of some of these spaces. We can open hatches in these ETFE coils and allow natural ventilation into the space to cool it naturally instead of relying on large air conditioning units. And then kind of a whole system working together to kind of heat and cool this building. When we get around to the winter months, we can look at other strategies of kind of heating this building. So in the fall, we can kind of rely on internal gains to heat the building, radiant heating. Capture all that using ETFE, more insulative surfaces. And when we swing around to the office, it's a cross section through one of the vertical lungs. So these can be kind of additional meeting spaces, additional program spaces that can occupy vertical circulation happens in them. They're really kind of the thermal tempering lungs of the whole office. So you can activate them in the summer, respond to the excess amount of solar radiation. You can use, there's a channel cut in to the site that's taking in water from the Menominee River, and then also the water that's being collected from the site that's being running through the biofiltration pools is dispersed into the channel we're going to run through the landscape here. So we can start to use some of this water to actually use in the radiant system of the cooling of some of these spaces. And then also, kind of what I spoke to a little earlier is that within these lungs, or these vertical lungs, we can allow natural ventilation to kind of cool some of these spaces. You can open up a window. So you're actually engaging with what's happening in the exterior environment to kind of heat and cool some of these spaces. In the winter, we can start to use radiant heating. Collect on the internal gains. That is thermal pumps.
Can you go back to the home page where you had all of the tiles? So as a format for the sort of production of the project, is this only, or is this unique to your project, or could you see somebody using this as a way to design, where they would go from one to another to another to another, based on climate or program?
I think it had the intention to be set up in a progression that way to kind of identify the problem with the polemic of heating and cooling systems within buildings, and then to kind of show the range of systems or techniques, strategies that you can apply in supplement of large mechanical systems within buildings. So yes, I think it was supposed to be meant as a here's the problem, here's the language we can use, or the strategies that we can begin to think about and apply, and here's a solution that it's intended to be applied to.
So
this all automated, or is this open to manual regulation? And I say that from the context of your project here, where you have, I guess it must be office space or research.
Yep.
And first of all, I should say that this is a beautiful piece of work. But that said, there is the problem of sensible heat and latent heat.
Mm-hmm.
And in large offices with lots of people, sometimes the sensible heat generated by humans may exceed your requirement for heat.
Mm-hmm. And that it would be overheating?
Yeah.
Yep.
Can that be regulated from the paradigm that you presented us with?
Yep. So maybe I didn't touch on this specifically, but these vertical lungs that I've been talking about create these kind of pockets or larger cushions of air, more like an expanded double skin that can start to temper some of the air within there. So if the space is overheating from the internal gains of all the latent heat, all the internal factors within a space, then you can open up a window that isn't directly into the exterior environment, blowing in cold air, but more into kind of a semi-conditioned zone, where you can kind of take a slightly conditioned or more conditioned air and naturally ventilate it then. And all of these strategies and techniques are based on the kind of I guess they're based on the fact that we need to engage in how we utilize. We can't just turn on a switch and have the whole building heat. People need to play an active role in how they're conditioning or heating the space. So somebody would actually go up and open a window if they were overheating, so that would allow natural ventilation to come in. So the occupant becomes an active participant in the heating and cooling of the building.
One thing that the final presentation doesn't quite do is look at the process, because all of the matrix was really there before you had the final form. Mm-hmm. And you were beginning to look at how the pieces would begin to go together. And I guess those images over there, which are on the wall, begin to, well, they sort of show the beginning and the ending, but you had a few other pieces that you were exploring along the way. And I think that part of what I found interesting about the way the Thesis was working was how you were taking the matrix of the ideas and beginning to move through. There's some of your form explorations early on, and for those that are looking at this for the first time, that some of this was a process of trying to explore what types of forms might lead to the final. So that's beginning to show some of the things that were going on, rather than it almost can appear that these pieces could have been done at the end to fit on the form. And I think part of what I saw as the crux of what you were doing in trying to look at taking the thermal forces and form the architecture is it's that process of forming. Mm-hmm. And there was some exploration that was going on that looked at all the forms before you ended up getting to this one. I think that is critical to what you really did as a thesis, and it's there, so that you can call it out from the matrix, all the information, which is the other interesting part of having this. This has your process from the beginning.
Right. I mean, I think that the thing about the process is that for you it's not a linear one, and I don't think that even given the matrix you could just select a set of pieces and have them all work together. It's kind of really a back and forth, trying something, seeing what the appropriate surface condition might be relative to the internal program. So like, there's a bunch of moving parts at all times, and like, how do you solidify it into one static condition in the end? It's an interesting problem that you seem to have accomplished pretty effectively. But it did take a long time to get to that point. I mean, just thinking of like going back to Mike's point on the form itself and the subtle fine tuning of each surface. You know, like you presented it as though you know the top surface is ideal for PVs because it's receiving the most amount of annual daylight. The glass surface right underneath it, I'm looking at like the atrium space, needs to be shielded in the summer from excessive heat gains, right? But I think there was a subtle fine tuning of each one of those surfaces to kind of minimize that effect already or maximize certain effects, right? So I think that speaks to the nuanced nature that you've developed throughout the semester, where you have a series of techniques, but those aren't just kind of slapped onto the project. They need to be fine-tuned, and there's a fine-grained process embedded within each one of the larger techniques that you've explored in the matrix.
Right, and you know, to your first comment, I guess that's you know, when I set up that diagram showing typical program building design HVAC gets applied to it. I guess that's why I kind of had the diagram being more of a cyclical one, and that all, you know, through the whole process it needs to be kind of tested and they need to inform each other. So, you know, like to your point, you can't just apply and slap on some of these surfaces and say, hey, we're this building. The program, the building form, these environmental engagement strategies all need to kind of inform each other and kind of push back and pull back and respond to each other. And it needs to be done, you know, from the conception of a building and not slap on.
I think that the matrix to me operates in kind of two different ways. I mean, one, it reveals the kind of underlying process and decisions that you made as you worked through it. And then on the other hand, it's also it's an instructional document. I think one of the things that maybe is absent or that wants to be maybe further amplified is this idea of identifying things that are static or dynamic, because there's a certain degree of testing that comes into play just every time you make an assembly where you take some form of surface and you apply some particular form to it. Then there's these criteria that you're looking for, whether it's dealing with external performance or internal performance, right? Or maybe another way of putting it is that the dynamic quality of the project is one that's negotiating between extensive and intensive flows, where the extensive are the ones that deal primarily with form, so it kind of exists before anything occurs. And then once you apply your tests, you get some intensive results which deal with these like internalized flows.